Hello, I'm David Marsden from The Standard. On this edition of How to Be a CEO, we're getting some tips on sorting out your finances when you're trying to start a business. We're speaking to Ruth Handcock, the CEO of Octopus Money, and she'll also be appearing at the Watercooler Event, which is being held alongside the Evening Standard's SME Expo at Excel London on the 23rd and 24th of April. Tickets are free. Go to watercoolerevent.com to find out more. First of all, hopefully, a nice simple question. Just tell me, what is Octopus Money? Because it's a fairly recent creation, isn't it?
It is. So Octopus Money is a new brand from the Octopus Group that lots of people have heard of as an energy business and a financial services business. And we're on a mission to give everyone help with their money from a real person. So we match individuals with a coach or a financial advisor and get them from completely confused. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what a pension is. Why is everyone using this ISA word? Through to, I feel in control. I feel as if I've got a plan and I know what to do about it. That's our mission.
That sounds wonderful, but I'm sure it's much more complicated than that. What sort of things are people coming to you when they first go to you? Why are they going to Octopus Money?
Normally people come to us because they don't know where to go for help. So I think when it comes to money in the UK, people sort of think of money as a mathematical problem. It's not. Money's a really emotional problem. That when you say to people, how do you feel about money? They say, oh, it makes me feel stupid, or I'm scared. I think I'm always getting it wrong. I'm probably doing worse than the person next to me. That's how people feel. It's unlike something like when you say to people, are you a great driver? Or are you above average? And way more than 50% of people say yes. With money, it's the exact opposite. Way more than 50% of people say, I'm terrible with money. And when you say, where do you go for help? They say, I have no idea. I might ask my parents. I might ask my mate who works in financial services. But beyond that, I don't know. So that's why people come to us, because they're really confused and they don't know where to go for help. But yet they know that money is something that we interact with almost sort of every hour of every day. It's a huge, huge part of our lives, like it or not. So to have something that's such a big part of your life that makes you feel so stressed and bad about yourself, you've got to be able to find some improvement on that and get to a plan that makes you feel happy and in control and like you're winning, not losing.
I'd imagine there's a lot of people right now, because of the cost of living crisis, which feels like it's been going on for my entire lifetime. There's a lot of people who don't feel in control of their money right now. Are you experiencing that?
Absolutely. I think the people, cost of living is not on the front page as much as it was maybe 18 months ago. But that's not because for most people it feels as if it's gone away. In fact, for most people, it almost feels as if it's got worse because people have depleted their savings. Rents and mortgages are still going up. The cost of basic goods and services is still going up. And people are way less financially resilient than they were a couple of years ago to deal with that. And then what you find actually is when it becomes really bad is when people experience sort of shocks or things that happen in their lives that maybe 2 or 3 years ago they might have been able to deal with financially. They can't anymore. So the washing machine breaks, the car breaks down, they experience something, a bereavement or a separation, and suddenly all of that house of cards of I think I'm just about coping comes tumbling down. And I think that's what the cost of living crisis has done to us, is it stripped us of our financial resilience. And actually what we're trying to do is help people build that back up through lots of ways. So one of the first things we'll often say to people is, do you have 3 months of salary in an emergency fund? That's one of the things that can really help you go from, I feel like any little shock could completely derail me, to okay, I feel like I've got this sorted. I can, if the washing machine breaks, I'm okay. That's where we're trying to get people to.
In this time, obviously, a lot of our audience on How to Be a CEO are people who have just started a startup business or are about to start a startup business. Is there a nervousness about doing that right now? Have you seen? Are you getting people coming to you who are going, I've either just got a business on the go or I'm about to do that, but I don't know what to do now?
Yes. And I think that's because that's two things, actually. It's partly that personal resilience. So one of the things that we've spent quite a lot of time looking at as Octopus Money is social mobility. And you find that you get way fewer founders from working class and lower socioeconomic groups because they don't have that financial resilience. And that will get exacerbated at the moment, because if you don't have a parental or a family safety net, you're just way less likely to start your own business. And there's lots of research to show that. The second thing, as you will know, and all of your listeners will know, is it's just quite tough to raise money at the moment as well. So almost what you have to apply to your personal finances is the same as you have to apply to your business finances, which is the books have got to balance. So those two things together, I don't know when I'm going to be able to raise money and start paying myself a salary, combined with I perhaps don't have the same personal financial safety net as I did, I think will impact people wanting to start their own business. And we know that will have a dire effect on UK productivity as a whole, because young companies create so many jobs and, create so much economic prosperity for the UK that's a cycle we've got to try and reverse.
Yeah, I mean, if you have an issue with social mobility, one of the first things that goes is great ideas, because there are great ideas that never come to fruition, aren't there?
It's exactly it. It's exactly it. And the thing that really strikes me about social mobility is even once people enter the workplace, they progress 30% more slowly if they're from a lower socioeconomic group, even in an established corporate. So that is partly about confidence and how you cope with the workplace situation. But it's also about the fact that you're way less likely to go for a promotion if you feel like your personal financial situation can't handle that risk, because going for the stretch and it not working out has dire consequences if you're struggling to pay the rent, where if you're not, it doesn't. And so that all compounds to mean that if you grow up without wealth, then accumulating wealth is way harder, which doesn't feel like a fair situation.
So Ruth, what advice can you give to someone who maybe doesn't have very much money in the bank right now, but does want to set up a business themselves?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to do from a money perspective, we'd always recommend, is get your finances in shape such that you're confident getting through to the end of the month. Because if you're not confident getting through to the end of the month, it's very difficult to think longer term. So you've got to get that sorted. That might be about having 3 months cash in an emergency fund. It might just be about understanding your incomings and outgoings. One of our coaches once said to me that the most positive thing you can do for your finances is take your credit card details off Amazon. Now, we know that the straight through payments are so convenient, but just that fact, just that barrier to spending can be quite impactful on whether you get your spending and saving balance right. It's a tough thing to do, though. Then once you've got that sorted, once you feel as if you can confidently get through to the end of the month, then you can't ignore the fact that you've got to then make a long-term plan. And a long-term plan might be about retirement, but it doesn't have to be. It might be about, wanting to become a parent, wanting to get a mortgage rather than renting, wanting to move to a flat that you're not sharing with flatmates. To do that, you've got to think about how you make your money grow a bit faster. And that might be being really careful on where you put your cash. So lots of people will have moved cash around as interest rates have gone up, but now might get a bit lazy again because things are a bit less volatile. And what will happen is your interest rate will drift down. So don't let that happen. But then even better, think about when investing's right for you. Because you will hear lots of people talking about ISAs. ISAs are just a way of saving that is more tax efficient, but it allows you to invest as well. And if you invest over the long term, you will accumulate more wealth than if you keep your money in cash over the long term. So really consider that. Now that, I may be able to say that in a couple of minutes, it can be quite complicated. So, our advice is always think about who you can chat it through with, who's impartial, who's going to personalize it for you, and who's going to get you to the right long-term plan for you and maybe your family as well.
Yeah, that complication. I mean, something that's right for one person might not be right for another, and there are so many kind of different options out there in front of you. It can be extremely overwhelming. Is there a simple route for people to go through?
There is. They can come to Octopus Money. I mean, what I've found, and I've worked across sort of challenger banking and fintech and running Octopus Money for about 13, 14 years now. So what I found is we would all love this to be solved purely digitally. So we'd love there to be a pure digital solution that got you from I'm confused to I'm sorted. My experience over the last 10 years or so is that that's very difficult because money isn't just about the maths. As I said, it's about emotion. So my advice is talk to someone, but talk to someone at a cost that is affordable for you. That's why we use coaches as well as financial advisors, because it allows us to deliver help with your money for about 10% of the price of a typical financial advisor. But that one-to-one conversation, which is partly getting your own head sort of straight on what's right for me, can't be undervalued in my experience. If you know you want to invest, you want to get into a great fund, there are lots of solutions out there. If you're confused, in my experience, having a couple of conversations with someone to get your head straight and to get yourself to a plan, I haven't found anything else in the market that rivals that.
Let's go for a break now. Go to watercoolerevent.com to find out more about the 2-day exhibition looking at health, well-being and workplace culture. Why did you decide to take over the job of in Octopus Money? Because you were with the company before. This new venture comes up. Did you think, I'm going to do that and put yourself forward, or were you asked? How did that process work?
Oh, it's a good question. So Octopus is a very entrepreneurial group. We're still privately owned, 25 years since we were founded. So I was running Octopus Investments, which was actually the first business in the group. Lots of people think we were an energy business first, but we weren't. We were an asset manager. So we've got 13 billion under management, invested in venture capital, in real assets. So that's the business I was running. But my background before that actually was even more entrepreneurial. So I was the founding employee in a new challenger bank. And I personally really love building businesses at quite an early stage, because many of your listeners will know it's really difficult. But anything that's really difficult comes with great reward. So Octopus Investments was a 25-year-old business that was phenomenal to run. But I personally was ready for two things. I was ready for a business that was in really fast growth stage, which Octopus Money is. And I was ready for a business that was really close to its customers and incredibly mission-led. And Octopus Money is that as well. So Simon, who founded the Octopus Group, and I had lots of conversations. Was I asked or did I ask? I think it's probably a combination of both. I think I'd made it pretty clear that I wanted to grow something. And he said, well, I'd rather you grew something here than somewhere else. So go and do this. But to me, those are the best places to work, where you manage to create a really challenging career path within one umbrella with people you know and trust, and think make great decisions. That to me is the perfect career move.
So what was your strategy then when you went out on day one? You went, right, here's what we're going to do and here's how we're going to get there.
Oh, the strategy number one was all team. So I don't believe you can build a brilliant business unless you have a brilliant team. So I spent the first few months really obsessing over how did I get what were actually two management teams coming together from two different businesses that I'd merged into a group of people that trusted each other, that worked really quickly, that understood each other's strengths and weaknesses. Because that to me is the foundation of a fast-growing business. If you don't have that, you can't throw fantastic challenges at a business unless you have that group of people. So that was challenge number one. Challenge number two actually was then thinking about how do you change the values of the business such that I thought we were more ready for hypergrowth. So we actually took the existing values and kind of ripped them up and rewrote them. And I used this analogy that I probably overused internally, but of a toddler running downhill. So I made it very clear that that's how I wanted people to feel. I wanted people to feel like they were moving a bit too quickly. They were slightly sort of over their skis, but that they were giggling, and that when they fell over, they were going to bounce straight back up again. Because again, everyone needs to understand when they're in a fast growth company that that's how it feels, and that's okay. And therefore making mistakes is okay. So we also do something called Stumble of the Week, where in our all hands meeting, we get everyone to talk about the stupidest thing they've done that week. Because everyone's got to get comfortable with failure, because when you're doing something that no one's ever done before, you're going to fail a lot. And then actually the third thing is then, how do you set a mission and make it clear to everyone in the business what their job is towards achieving that mission? So I personally don't see my job as CEO, as Chief Product Officer. I've come across some CEOs who do that absolutely brilliantly. I would much rather say, this is what I think we're aiming for, and trust my product team to be the Chief Product Officer and come up with the absolute best solution they can to get to that goal. So for me, then the job is setting the track to run on. It's making sure everyone's aiming for the same thing, has the same mission, believes it, gets up, sort of living and breathing it. and then trust people to get on with it. And that's how I think you can deliver fast growth, because you're not, as the CEO, then the single point of failure.
I always find that those stumbles, as you call them, are the single most important thing, and recovering from those, because they inform sometimes the direction you need to go in. You might think this is the way we're going to go, and then that fails, and you go, actually, we should be going over this way. Have you found that with Octopus Money? Are you on the same course you were when you first sat at your desk?
Not at all. No, I mean, I think this time last year we were on a purely organic track. So our route to market is we partner with employers and we launch Octopus Money as a workplace benefit, because we find people are uniquely ready for a conversation about their money when they're sitting at their desk and they have a screen in front of them. And that's what breaks the spell in someone finding the headspace to talk about a long-term plan, in the way that in other parts of their life, they can't quite find that moment to do it. So that was our route to market. And then over the course of the year, we developed two other routes to market, which is working with the wealth management industry to look after the lower value clients they don't want, because their cost to serve is too high to serve them brilliantly. So we've acquired customers that other people were struggling to serve. And then thirdly, thinking about how we can package up our coaching methodology and our software to white label to others. So just as many businesses at this stage go through, we've got our core, which is we know that the thing we do brilliantly is combine people and technology to deliver help with money at a dramatically different cost to serve. That's our heart. And actually that hasn't changed. But how we package that up and grow our impact actually has changed quite a lot, even in that short period of time of a year.
Yeah, actually, I was going to talk to you about impact in a kind of way, because as you've mentioned a couple of times, Octopus is a well-known brand, but it's well-known for energy. Is it a disadvantage to you to be trying to do something like this within an established company?
Not at all, because it's Octopus. So some of the corporates I've worked for in the past, I think that would have been true. And I think as soon as you layer on top of a growth stage business, I guess the governance that you'd often see in a corporate, I think that's very difficult to grow something quickly. Octopus does that very differently. So because we're still entrepreneur-led and we're privately held, and everyone on the board, me included, cares way more about long-term impact than we care about anything else, we create an awful lot of freedom for the founders of group companies to grow in the way they would actually if they were a founder-led business out there in the world, but without having to raise money and with a brand that people recognize. So we try and take the advantages and get rid of the disadvantages. But it's a really important balance, because to me, the founder or a sort of passionate leadership team are one of the most powerful things for a growth stage company. And as soon as you smother that, as corporates I've sometimes seen do, then really you're destroying the thing that you're trying to create, that you're trying to power to create value. So for me, it's a gigantic advantage, because people have heard of us, people trust Octopus rightly because we're obsessed with customers. And I don't feel any of the disadvantages that I might in a corporate. If you step inside Octopus HQ, it definitely doesn't feel like a corporate. It feels much more like a startup. So it's getting that balance right, even as you grow. That's very important, I think.
Now, having taken on this position, when was the last time you were at a social event and somebody didn't ask you for financial advice, Ruth?
Oh, it's a great question. I try not to give it because I'm not personally a qualified advisor, but people often, I was chatting to a guy who came around to fix the plumbing the other day, and he was like, "Oh, what fund should I invest in?" I'm like, "I'll give you some tips, but I'm not a qualified financial advisor, so do not take this as gospel." But yes, people ask a lot, and it just shows. I mean, when we launch in a workplace, 40% of people sign up for a session. The UK is completely confused about their money, so it's not surprising that people ask all the time, because no one knows what they're doing. And we know we don't teach it, and there's very little support for people when they start working. So it's it's not surprising.
And you're going to be talking at the Watercooler Event, which is a few weeks away from this recording. So you may not know what you're going to be talking about, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What can people expect if they come along and to your session?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about much of what we've talked about today, actually. So how the cost of living crisis has impacted employees, but really from the perspective of the people team. So if you're a people professional, you have a pretty tough job. You know, you're thinking about performance management, you're thinking about career development, you're thinking about staff retention. And then quite frequently, people will come to people in your team and say, oh, I'm going through this money crisis, just as they might say, I'm going through a mental health crisis. And most workplaces now will say, for mental health or for physical health, okay, I've got someone here who can help you. Most workplaces haven't yet got to the stage where they've got someone who they can deploy for financial resilience. And so we're leaving our people professionals completely underprepared for dealing with those sort of crises, which are very intertwined with workplaces, because that's where you get your salary from. It's where you get your pension from. So my advice is going to be to people professionals going kind of, I get how tough your job is. We're here actually to help your employees when they're either going through a sort of crisis, something's changed for them and they don't know how to deal with it, or just to change the conversation from the cost of living is going up. Can I have a 10% pay rise, please? And you're sitting there as a people professional going, I wish I had a magic money tree, but I don't. I'm trying to make sure we have a resilient organization. How can you change that conversation? How can you stop the 70% of your employees who will salary hunt this year doing so because you're trying to retain them? So that's what I'm going to talk about, and try and power up people teams to be able to retain their best people and move the conversation on from salary.
And with Octopus Money itself, what's the future for you? What kind of areas are you specifically looking at now over the next 12 months?
Yeah, so we'll continue to partner with employers. So actually our core business is powering up people teams to support their employees. And increasingly, we're working with bigger and bigger businesses, particularly in financial services, actually, where some of us feel like we're serving our customers very well, but perhaps we're not looking after our employees as well as we should, because they're as confused about money as anything. So more and more businesses we're hoping to work with over this year. And then we really want to power the industry. So we're not going to solve this problem alone. It's a category that doesn't exist. So getting help with your money in the mass market from a person, there's not really many places to go apart from to us. So we want to power up retail banks, wealth managers, financial advisors to say, actually, we can do this too. Because the more places that are offering money help, the fewer people that will get into crisis situations. It's a bit like medicine, way better to prevent than cure. But to prevent, actually, when you say to someone, where do you go for help? You want them to list off 3 or 4 things, where at the moment, they look at you blankly. So that's our mission.
That was Ruth Handcock, CEO of Octopus Money. For more interviews, news and features, go to standard.co.uk/business or pick up the Evening Standard newspaper. How to be a CEO. We'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll see you then.